welcome back and thank you for staying with us. You've got me going through some of your feedback. We're still with PS for Higher Education and Research, that is Dr. Beatrice Muganda Inyangal. Thank you so much for staying with us. There is the issue then of school fees in terms of how much one is owed to universities, both private and public, and then how much then each student is supposed to pay, because I do not believe that school fees is something that should be hidden under wraps. In other countries, the school fees is available on the websites of these countries.
Yeah, let me begin by emphasizing the fact that we have made university education so cheap, especially for the parents who require the most need. It is actually cheaper than high school fees.
Is that so?
Yes. So for students who attended national schools, they were paying 53,540. Okay? For a student taking a Bachelor of Arts, okay, Bachelor of Arts in one of the universities that we sampled, yeah? The highest they would pay, the highest parents would pay in Band 5, and those are parents like myself, it's 48,960 a year. So that means 24,000 roughly a term.
Yeah.
Okay? Then the next band, they would pay 36,720. Okay? Now, any child going to a high school that's boarding in Kenya pays 40,000. So that is still cheaper than that. Okay? 36,720. If you divide by 2, that's just like roughly 18,400 a term. The third band would be 24,480. That is 12,000, 240 a term. Band 2, where government is paying 90%, this student would only pay 12,240, Bachelor of Arts, sampled from one of our universities. And so the fees per semester would be 6,120. And then we go to the 3,000, the most vulnerable. Here, where the government is shouldering 95% of the cost. The parents only get to pay 6,120. 3,060 each semester. Let's also look at how the figures look like for medicine. I know that when most parents got that letter with a 612,000 for medicine, they were shocked.
Yes.
But I want to allay the fears of parents and say, look, if you require the most need, if you're most vulnerable, the government will meet 95% of the cost of this 612. And as a parent, you'll only pay about 30,000. So that means 15,000 in semester 1, 15,000 in semester 2. And questions have been raised about parents who are so needy that even this 30,000 is a lot.
Absolutely.
We have the upkeep that is availed to the students. So in Band 1, the most vulnerable, they would receive 60,000. Okay, so this is 30,000 first semester and 30,000 the second semester. So for that student who really is very vulnerable, they can still afford to get something from this upkeep to help meet the cost of their programs. So let me not go through the entire range, but for Band 2, it would be like 61,200, which is 30,000 each semester. Again, quite affordable. But now for my child, and the professors, I'm the peers of professors, so I always make a reference to my professors. If my child was undertaking a medicine course, they would pay 244,800. So that means 120,000, a semester. And really, how much am I paying for my children to go to private school right now? Or how much are some of the parents who are able paying for their children to go to private school? A lot more than that. So asking them to pay, 120,000 is not really asking too much. Yes.
You talked about, the Kenya Revenue Authority. On the question of the funding on, the debts owed to both private and public, if you could run through again.
Yes. Okay. So I think the question you want to ask is, what are we doing about these bills that we owe as a government to private and public universities? You will recall that there was a pending bills committee, and these bills were submitted to this committee. The committee is working through them, and at an appropriate time, they will be able to advise government.
Would you know the figures that are owed to private universities and public?
Yes, I already told you 51 billion for private and 137 billion for public.
So then, KRA, what data would they be relying on the salaried population or the taxpayers in the country that are registered to then run this means to be able to then determine the funding model, or rather how you'll be able to offer scholarships and also funding to Kenyans?
So we have the income tax range.
Yes.
And for those families that earn 5,995 shillings and below, that is very easy to get from their PIN, records with KRA.
Okay.
And those then are categorized in band 1. And then those that earn 23,670 up to 5,995, those would be in band 2. Then those that earn up to 70,000 would be in band 3. Those that earn up to 119,999,000 would be in band 4, and 120,000 and above, those would be in band 5.
Okay.
Yeah. So that data is very easy to retrieve. Yes.
Yes, there are concerns that the ministry, the government didn't pilot this new funding model, so that then the consequent action would be the reduction in enrollment, even as you call on Kenyans to apply. Was it piloted?
Like I said, in developing this model, we actually involved parents, we involved students, we involved lecturers, we involved members of the public at large to, suggest and discuss weights. So in that manner, we did not determine these weights arbitrarily. They were actually determined through a very widespread selection of stakeholders.
Okay.
Then I want to say that through the first year of implementation, the number of, the percent of students who applied through the appeal process were just about 10%. And they provided the documentation that was needed to look at their means again, and only 5%, were found to be credible. So really, an instrument that performs, at 95% level of efficacy, 95% level of confidence, that is a very strong instrument. But that be as it may, that was the first time that we were implementing this instrument. And so we retreated in June and looked at it thoroughly, invited stakeholders again to review the weights assigned to the variables, like if you're an orphan, if you live in informal sector, if you went to a private school, all of that. So again, we reviewed the weights best on the input of stakeholders. Yes.
So it was done last year, or
the first time we applied this was last year, because remember the president launched it in May last year. Okay. So the KCSE 2022 cohorts were all funded through the new funding model. And I want to say, without any fear of contradiction, that there was no noise then. Because we shall be bringing those students who are funded through this model to this studio. They are very happy. They are very happy.
They're very happy.
Yes.
Okay. And it is funded according to how it looks on paper.
Yes, it is funded according to how it looks on paper. Like I said, there were a few cases that were failed, they were not categorized appropriately. And obviously, I have explained. So like, for example, if you went to a national school and you were supported, but you did not provide evidence that you are supported, then, there would be a problem there. And so through the appeals process, when additional information is shared, then we categorize these students. But again, going forward, we shall actually do visitations to confirm the status of these students.
So the 95% efficacy was determined by the ministry?
It was determined by the number of those students who felt that they had been miscategorized and appealed.
And appealed?
Yes.
The appeals were successful?
5%.
5% of them?
10%, about 9% appealed, 5% were successful.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've had some students say that perhaps there's corruption and the appeals process may not be effective. I want to assure the students, I want to assure the parents that we have a very efficient mathematical model. So when this data is inputted in this model, it's automatically calculated. You know, you just get it on the tap of a button. So the issue of human error, the issue of the system being manipulated is not there.
Okay.
Yes.
The issue of then these universities' PS looks like we may have bitten more than you could chew in terms of the number that you have. They increased from 10 to 42, you know, when there was the clamor for universities in every county. Looking at the efficacy then, and there have been suggestions even in the working report of merging the universities. Is that an option that the ministry could be able to consider so that then that increases PS, you know, specialization in certain courses like we see, whereas, you know, the US is a developed country, so that then universities in, say, a certain area specialize in these agriculture, medicine, and all that?
Yeah, I think the questions here are two. The first one is about, do we have enough universities?
Okay.
Actually, we are just operating at about 19% in terms of enrollment in our universities. And our target is to move that up to 30%. So what does that mean? It means that any excess capacity in our universities will be utilized. And don't forget that we have just launched the recognition of prior learning.
Yeah.
So that means that anybody with a skill, that skill can be recognized, rated, and they can be facilitated to upgrade their education if they want, including, you know, enrolling into universities.
Okay.
So as a country, we still need to expand access. And so this excess capacity is good for us in terms of the opportunity it provides for those who are out of school and who still desire, and it's very favorable for them to access university education.
Okay.
Then there's the issue of niching, universities establishing their niche, okay? So initially, of course, when we started, universities stood out with certain specialization. And when there was a very high demand for education, then of course they started expanding and becoming comprehensive universities. But I can assure you that we are winding right back there. But the question of access, okay, quality and affordability is very delicate. And it is not an easy question to address throughout the world, you know. Okay. Would you choose to have, you know, a few very high quality centers of excellence and leave out everybody else? So it is about striking a delicate balance.
Between quality and quantity?
Yes. Okay.
So then when we look at the issue of the whole sustainability of this new funding model, how sustainable is it? The other one seemed more, the older model seemed a bit sustainable. This one, you know, there have been arguments and reports that, you know, it could be a bit unsustainable. I
don't understand your definition of sustainability. I just told you 23 of our 40 universities were insolvent. Is that what you define as sustainability? Anyway, it was not sustainable at all because, you know, universities were not able to meet their obligations. You know, they are not able to remit pay as you earn, they are not able to remit SACCO, you know, deductions from the lecturers. They are not able to pay their debtors, suppliers on time. So for me, that is not sustainability, okay? But we have done some projections, and within 3 years, with the new funding models, universities should be able to cover the pending bills and become afloat, and then be able to enhance the inputs that go into providing high quality education. In terms of sustainability, I can tell you, for scholarships, every year we just need a little bit extra to fund the scholarships because of the increasing number of the student population each year. Because those that graduate, then we save some money from those that are graduating, which then feeds into the system to support those that are coming in. For the loans, we need very heavy investment into the Higher Education Loans Board, and we are exploring many options, including the option that works for Malaysia. In Malaysia, the Higher Education Loans Board does not depend on government at all. They floated a bond, and they got some angel investors, investors who then buy and are not in a hurry to get back their money. And so those are some of the options we are looking at, so that HELB can have enough money to support this funding system.
Whereas it is important to have universities that are spread across the country, is it also would the ministry, would your docket be willing to ensure that some universities, such as those that have maintained a certain way of specialization, continue doing that, so that then, as much as there is the whole issue of accessibility and increasing the number of universities, there's still the issue of ensuring that it is quality, in as much as we are trying to balance with ensuring that everyone else gets the access to higher education?
Our mission really is to provide a quality, affordable education that's equitable and accessible. And we are working at that. And this new funding model is one way of raising the additional resources that we require to improve on the quality of our education. Quality is expensive. Quality doesn't come cheap. And we all agree that we need to enhance the quality of education. And that will come with additional resources. And quality, we need quality everywhere. And that's what we are working at. Evans is asking, ask Daktari a random one. For a student taking computer science at Egerton, Njoro, how much will they pay? Computer science?
Computer science, yes.
So that would range between 250 to 300,000
per
year. Yeah. And previously I have been asked why universities, charge slightly different. It would be more or less the same, like the difference would not be significant, but there would be some difference. And I have said, it all goes with the inputs that go into that program, in terms of the teachers, their qualifications, their numbers, the library, how well equipped it is, how many excursions they take outside, of the university, how many practical sessions. All these inputs are costed, and that then determines the cost of the program. And allow me again at this juncture to just emphasize that the cost of the program is like a budget in the house, What is it going to cost to run this house this month, So maybe the budget for the house is 20,000 shillings. Mama may go to Chama and get some 5,000 shillings, throw in there. Baba might, get some 10,000, throw in there. Maybe they have a son who works, who will throw in another 3,000. So that is the same way we are looking at this. There's the cost, but then there's who meets this cost. That is when we have the government, and then we have the household. So the households only meet a proportion of this cost. Yes.
Yeah. There's a question here. Over 70,000 students are set to join university this year. Could miss out on government scholarship under the new funding model. The Ministry of Education says it hasn't received funds to cover them. What do you have to say about this?
No, that's really very simple, because money is usually availed as it's collected. So as we collect the money, so then the exchequer is released to fund the students. As we collect more money, you know, we go into supplementary budgets and additional resources are availed. So I am not worried about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
The funding gap of 48 billion shillings, how is that going to be addressed as well?
A funding gap of 48 billion?
Yes.
No, I'm not aware of a funding gap of 48 billion shillings.
All right.
But what I have just said is that whatever budget we have, okay, money is availed from the exchequer as it becomes available, okay. So if we have whatever resources we have now, they will move us up to a certain point and we will have a supplementary and there'll be additional resources.
Okay.
Yes.
Edwin is asking, what happens to the loans of university students who defer courses or, I dare say, at times get deregistered for one reason or the other by the institutions? Do you still go after them despite them finishing school?
If you took a loan, okay, in a bank to start a business and the business crashed, would the bank come after you or not? Yes, they would still have to pay. And maybe this is the, you know, negative motivation they have to try and complete their studies. Yes, the only thing is that they will not be harassed for as long as, you know, they don't have a job, but they keep their account open, they keep in touch with help and just share their circumstances. Nobody is going to, you know, harass them or go after them to pay. But when they get a job, yes, they would have to pay.
Do you think we need legislation that would say redefine and explain, because in the Constitution, basic education is what, primary education is what is free. What would then ensure that Kenyans actually look forward to not only going to university, but also participating in paying, you know, the amounts that you're talking about, the 3,000s, the 8,000. What would we need to make it free?
So there's some science behind basic education being free,
yes,
because the rates of returns to society are high. When you have a literate population that is able to read and write, understand instructions, you know, like if they want to give medicine to a child, do basic arithmetic so they get their change right in the shop, undertake their civic duty by voting and understand whom they are voting for and why. So those are social rates of return, okay? And they are high at the basic level, and that's why the government meets the cost at this level. But the private rates of return at the university level are 32% to the individual. And so that really is the principle behind the expectation that somehow, somewhere, the costs of education at university level has to be shared. Yes.
Austin, in 2022 alone, we saw the UN deregister over 30,000 students, a great number of whom who had not completed their studies. This is in line with the loans, university loans. What would be your response to, you know, such actions by activities? I mean, such actions by universities to try and, you know, recover and look for this funding?
You know, it would be very difficult for me to comment without knowing really the details of the case, because you live in this world and you know people are deregistered for different reasons. Some may be deregistered because of some malpractice. Maybe they also abandoned, you know, school for some time, because every university has its rules and regulations which students have to abide to so that they can be retained within the system. Some may have failed, so without really knowing the details, it would be very difficult for me to comment.
To comment about that?
Yeah, with confidence.
Okay. So, and in terms of, you know, funding, we have so many bursaries, we have so many funding opportunities, especially for students. As we get this conversation to a close, where is there a possibility that cook-ups, that their help and everyone else would be able to be merged into ensuring that then this funding is available in quote-unquote a seamless manner?
That is already happening to some extent. Remember, these funds are protected by law, and so The only way we have managed to access them is through collaboration. There are some counties that are collaborating with the Higher Education Loans Board. There are some constituencies that are collaborating with the Higher Education Loans Board to avail these resources to students from their constituencies. And so my call to action is for more counties and more constituencies to collaborate with the Ministry of Education to avail resources for the students to enroll and participate in university education affordably.
Okay. Yes, you can speak to Kenyans to that camera and talk to them about what the government envisions to have or to see with this new model in 2025, and perhaps when you have this conversation next year, what will you ideally have expected to see within this rollout?
Yeah, as I've indicated, in the past, we've had our students, especially those from less resourced families, excluded from some programs which they are not able to pay for. But now, with this new funding model, there is support that ensures that every student everywhere can participate in any program, irrespective of the cost. And so going forward, we want to see more representation across all the programs and more representation in all careers from all strata of society. And that really is what the bottom-up economic transformation agenda is all about. Lifting those at the bottom of the ladder and creating more equality and empowerment for all Kenyans.
Absolutely.
And education is the great equalizer. Trust a government that wants to hold your hand to help your children access education irrespective of your circumstances.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Beatrice Muganda Inyangal, the PS for Higher Education and Research in the Republic. Thank you so much for speaking to us on the Daily Report.
The pleasure was mine.
Absolutely. Our sign language interpreter has been Rhoda Nyamai. My name is George Maringa, wishing you a good night. As always, stay safe and be kind to one another. I'll see you tomorrow.